Federal Drive is presented by GEHA, Government Employees Health Association, proudly providing health and dental benefits to federal employees and their families. Visit GEHA.com.
A federal judge in San Francisco is temporarily blocking the State Department from finalizing hundreds of employee layoffs. Foreign service employees were slated to be officially separated from the agency last week, but federal employee unions are making the case that state and several other agencies aren't fully adhering to a provision in the shutdown-ending spending bill. That provision temporarily blocked the Trump administration from carrying out layoffs. Federal News Network's Jory Heckman is here with more. Jory, thanks for joining me.
Hey, Terry. Great to be here.
There's been a lot of personnel news coming out of the State Department lately. Why don't you just give us a quick recap of all of the things that have been happening?
Yeah, a lot has been going on. The most recent development here has been the State Department trying to finalize the last bit of its reductions in force that began this summer. Back in July, the State Department sent RIF notices to about 1,300 of its employees, predominantly folks in the civil service, although a couple hundred foreign service officers were swept up in that as well. And the majority of these layoffs, these employees have already been officially separated from the agency. That happened back in September. Through some quirk or another, there were two different tracks of notice periods here. The civil service employees, by and large, got a 60-day notice between their RIF notice and when they would officially leave the agency. The foreign service employees, however, they got 120 days, so their separation date was going to be on November the 10th. However, November 10th came and went, and employees who were expected to be separated from the agency, they got a notice saying that they were going to have their administrative leave extended while the department addressed some administrative errors. The department hasn't ever really cleared up what those administrative errors were, but it's worth pointing out that those separations were going to happen towards the end, but still during the 43-day government shutdown.
The RIFs themselves began prior to the shutdown, though. So is there some confusion about whether the continuing resolution language applies to these RIFs or not?
Yeah, so there's been a bit of a Rorschach test going on with this reading of the continuing resolution and the provision in there that is barring agencies from proceeding with some layoffs, some reductions in force. Now, the text of the continuing resolution says that between the date of enactment, so November 12th, and the end of January of next year, no federal funds can be used to initiate, carry out, implement, or otherwise notice a reduction in force to reduce the number of employees within any department. That's the letter of the law there. Agencies, however, have taken a narrower reading of that language, and they said, all right, well, what that means to us, and this is contained in guidance from the Office of Personnel Management, all agencies, they will, if they sent RIF notices between October 1st, the start of the shutdown, and November 12th, the end of the government shutdown, they would rescind those RIFs. And that would be what they believe to be their obligation under the continuing resolution. However, there's now this added legal development where federal employee unions, the American Federation of Government Employees, and the American Foreign Service Association, as part of an amended lawsuit, this is the ongoing lawsuit that started at the beginning of the government shutdown, they are now saying in this latest chapter, well, wait a minute, State Department and other agencies aren't following the continuing resolution as we understand it to be, and so they think that state should actually be rescinding these layoffs that they were trying to finalize just last week, just last Friday.
What is the legal status of that case?
So these layoffs at the State Department are, as of now, officially on hold. Judge in San Francisco, U.S. District Court Judge Susan Ilston, officially signed a temporary restraining order. Now, if that name sounds familiar, we heard her name quite a bit. She is the same judge that did block layoffs from occurring during the government shutdown, because this is, again, the same lawsuit that carried on throughout the shutdown, and still there are these loose ends to tie up now that the shutdown is over. And one other thing that these parties, these plaintiffs are pushing for here is they say that it's not just the State Department they're worried about. They say that agencies, including the Small Business Administration, the General Services Administration, and the Departments of Education and Defense have also not been fully implementing that layoff reprieve in the continuing resolution and that they should actually be rescinding more RIFs than they have. SBA is one notable case where just last month they told folks that they were going to have their RIFs rescinded, and then a day later they said, oh, actually, we misread the legislation. Your RIFs will continue as planned, and sorry, they're not going to be rescinded.
There's a lot of whipsawing there for the affected employees. What are they saying, or what are the unions saying? What are the agencies saying about how this is going to roll forward?
Well, they really have raised concerns about the back and forth of it all, that the uncertainty for employees adds to an already tough situation. Layoffs are never a welcome thing for federal employees, and they are concerned about how seriously to take any of this news or any of these developments. And so the unions are basically telling agencies to consider a broader interpretation of this legislation and ultimately bring more relief, bring more rescissions than they have up until this point.
On top of all of this uncertainty, you've got news about a change in HR leadership at the State Department. What's happening there?
Yeah, so based on what I've heard from a couple of sources here, Lou Olowski, the Chief Human Capital Officer for the Bureau of Personnel and Training, he's stepping down from that role, but he's working at a different role within the department. He's going to be the Senior Bureau Official for the Office of Foreign Missions. TBD on when that change of title will actually take place, but I've been told that it is in process here. Now, Olowski is the name that has appeared on these RIF notices. He is the individual who has signed off on them. And actually, what we saw back in July is his name appearing on some of the RIF rescissions that happened back then. Ever since day one, there were some hiccups where more State Department employees got RIFs than they meant to. And so there were some RIF rescissions on day one where they said, actually, sorry, you weren't supposed to get this. You still have a job here. But Olowski, this is a big part of what he's been doing at the State Department, overseeing these reductions in force. His name has also appeared before some of the court documents clarifying who can and who can't be RIFed, things of that nature. The American Foreign Service Association, going back to the spring, raised concerns about his appointment to be this top HR official within the State Department because all of his predecessors in that role, they have typically been career members of the Foreign Service with decades of experience. That is just not the background that he has. He is new to the department, and so AFSA said that this is a position that doesn't match his qualifications. And so they were very concerned and made their concerns known to the public that Olowski was not a good fit for the position.
Regardless of fit or skills and background, what does this mean for continuity as the State Department navigates through all of these different personnel actions?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see whether a change in HR leadership has anything to do with how the State Department has been carrying out what has largely been a year characterized by workforce cuts. Going forward, it's unclear what the State Department is going to do as far as hiring, as far as bringing new folks on board. It is worth pointing out that the Foreign Service did earlier this year begin hiring more classes of new Foreign Service officers at a time when it was also letting hundreds of them go. And so it's unclear yet what the trajectory of the overall Foreign Service workforce is going to look like in 2026 and beyond. But it has been a very dynamic year for the State Department workforce.
That's Federal News Network's Jory Heckman. Jory, thanks for keeping your finger on the pulse there at the State Department.
Thanks, Terry.
You can find his story at federalnewsnetwork.com.